Hi, everyone. Welcome to Black in Focus. I'm Karen Toulon here at our Bloomberg headquarters in New York. And today I'm really excited. We're going to have a fantastic conversation with Hip Hop Public Health, founded about 15 years ago to build health equity through the power of music, science, and art. And right now, Hip Hop Public Health is laser focused on sharing factual information about the COVID vaccines, but there's really a lot to talk about. So we're joined today by Executive Director and CEO Lori Rose Benson, and also Daryl DMC McDaniels, music pioneer and a member of Hip Hop Public Health's advisory board. So welcome to both of you, and thanks for talking with me today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.
Well, we've got a lot to talk about. Who's not with us today is Hip Hop Public Health founder, Dr. Olajide Williams. He kind of has a big job. He is the chief of staff at the Department of Neurology at Columbia. He's also the co-director of its Wellness Center. He's been called away on an urgent work matter, so he's not going to be with us. But we're going to start off talking today, I guess, about the community immunity and the vaccine program. But ultimately, this is about children's agency, about their health and the health of themselves and their community. And ultimately, I think it's also a conversation about something a lot of organizations are going through right now: how to reach an intended audience through effective messaging, culturally aware messaging. So, Lori, I'm going to start off with you. Dr. Williams, he's a world-recognized expert on stroke. Right? He comes up with this great idea somehow more than 15 years ago to help kids identify when a grown-up is having a stroke, because the faster people get to the hospital makes a difference between whether they live and how they live, right? How did he get from stroke to hip hop public health?
Sure. Well, Karen, first off, thank you so much for having us on and featuring the work of Hip Hop Public Health. Wow, Dr. Williams' story is incredible. I mean, he's an incredible person. And you got it right. It all started in New York City, in Harlem, when he was working at Columbia and Harlem Hospital and thinking, how can he help get people to the hospital in time so that their lives could be saved and have life-altering treatment after suffering a stroke. And his hypothesis was, well, what if we could use the power of music combined with evidence-based messaging? And why not use hip hop music, right? We were talking Harlem, we're talking about connecting to the African-American community. And why not talk about the music that was born in New York City that's all about social justice, that's all about speaking up for communities? And so he reached out to Dougie Fresh, who eventually became our founding artist. And that's another funny story. You're gonna have to ask him that when you see him next time about how they first got together. But the program that was ultimately created was the Hip Hop Stroke Program. They created a series of music and music videos and comic books, multimedia using evidence-based strategies, got significant NIH funding over the years. And now it's been a research-based and proven program throughout New York City, throughout New York State, and all around the country. And so I would say it was closer towards 2010 when the US was really focused on childhood obesity. And the folks at Michelle Obama's team, when she was in the White House, and her nonprofit, the Partnership for a Healthier America, was really focusing on Let's Move and physical activity and nutrition. And there was a lot of conversation around, well, can we take this model that was so effective around stroke intervention and prevention, and can we use it for childhood obesity, nutrition, education, physical activity? And that's where Doug reached out to friends like DMC right here, and lots of others, Chuck D, Ashanti, Jordan Sparks, and created a 19-song album with 4 videos called Songs for a Healthier America. And, and everything has grown from there. So basically, throughout, the last 15 years, there's been a ton of research, a ton of evidence generated around this model that we call the multi-sensory, multi-level health education model. And we use this to really speak to any area of health literacy. And the goal is to improve health literacy, inspire health behavior change, with ultimately achieving health equity.
So we'll come back to the full body of work that's available for free. So this is all material that's made available for free, the songs, the videos, etc. But Dee, I want to go to you and talk with you about your involvement. But first, before we talk specifically about hip hop public health, everyone knows who you are. You're Run DMC, music pioneers. You guys are in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for a reason. Influenced not just so-called African American music or Black music. You influenced all music. We'll talk about why you got involved with the organization. But first, I want to just start off with the basic thing. What is it about hip hop? Why is it just so caught on and captured people's attention and been such a force?
Well, the first answer to that question is it's music. So I've created the saying a couple of years ago: music succeeds where politics and religion fails. Politics is what it is, and religion is what it is, but music is the only thing that knocks down the walls that divide people. It's a vibration. It's a feeling that it don't matter if you're Black, white, Puerto Rican, big, short, tall, you can feel it. So that opens it up for dialogue, conversation, presentation, filled with information that becomes education. Let's talk about the history of hip hop. Hip hop is a form of music that took pieces from rock and roll, funk, R&B, opera, clap. We took pieces from everything. In the early days, before it was a recorded music industry thing, it was used as communication in these neighborhoods, particularly in the Bronx, New York, or Manhattan, Harlem, Queens, in the New York City area. It was used as a way of communication and providing information. Here's what's going on in these streets. Here's what we want. Here's what's true. And on top of that, it's like Lori said, hip hop is super, super powerful when we utilize factual information, whether it's historical, whether it has to do with society, or whether it has to do with current events. Now, that being said, the reason why it resonates is because it's a form of music where the listener or the person experiencing or watching it doesn't see celebrity. They see themselves. So over the years, from every generation, even going back to the early years of rock and roll, we realized that we could use music to tell the truth. We use music to tell the truth. Perfect examples in the early years is when you look at John Fogerty, when he did Fortunate Son. That was talking, we hear do this and do that, don't do that, do right, do wrong. John Fogerty was able to address issues about politics and government and presidents in his songs. Neil Young, for example, when we had the big incident with the soldiers shooting the students at Kent University, immediately the next day he ran and wrote a record about it. So where confusion and misinformation exists, back in the early 70s, us young people said we can utilize music to communicate truth and share these ideas. And that's why it's so positive, because it's the people talking to the people. Now,
and you were one of those voices, because you certainly had messages, yes, about Adidas and fun things, but also got the knowledge off to college. I mean, you were rapping about and talking about your personal experience and the things that you were doing that could inspire other people to think and maybe to act, but at least starting to think.
That's important. When I said I'm DMC and a place to be, I go to St. John's University. Since kindergarten, I acquired the knowledge. After 12th grade, I went straight to college. Just by me saying that, young people stopped gangbanging, stopped selling drugs, and started going to college. So we know that we can utilize hip hop for the good of the community and people.
So coming over to when you were approached by Hip Hop Public Health, it really
Yes.
wasn't that much of a stretch for you to think about how powerful
We was already doing it.
you were already
Right.
doing it.
But we wasn't talking about health, which is so beautiful. I salute Dr. Williams because, you know, all of us on here, our whole lives, our parents, I don't care if you was born in 1940, wash your hands, you know, say your prayers, you know, don't come in this house. We always get these instructions in everyday aspects of a life, but young people, kids, and even adults have a tendency not to pay attention to the important information necessary for their survival. So Dr. Williams was brilliant by saying, let's put everything we already know, everything we've been told, and everything people don't listen to, let's put it to music because we all pay attention to music. And that is the power of it.
I mean, I was listening yesterday, and I this is a full disclosure here. Schoolhouse Rock was kind of my thing growing up.
Everybody.
Conjunction Junction, if that could have been my
What's
wedding
your
song.
function? All of that.
My husband and I would have danced to that as our first song if I could have gotten away with it.
Those were hit records. Those were hit records.
But and beautifully produced, beautifully performed. But there's something about the science, right, Laura? I mean, you come from a background of education, and Dee knows this from literally doing the work for decades and wanting to be a successful artist, but also an artist who's true to himself and his passions. There's a science to the cadence of rap music, of hip hop music, the alliteration, the repetition, the pacing. Can you talk about, this isn't just randomly, let's just get some Black artists and throw them out there and hope that the message will somehow stick. There's data that's supporting the work that you all are doing, that you and Dee and the other artists and Laura, your team, are doing. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, there is the science behind the message, and all the things that you mentioned, from alliteration to the cadence, all of these are auditory signals that are connected to behavior change. And when you think about the model that Dr. Williams created, and I'll just get a little wonky for a second, we took what's called the social ecological model of influence, which puts the person at the center, with the people they interact with around them, within the communities, you know, government and policy. And when we create a resource, we think about what that resource means at every level and how you make it relevant. And then here's the magic. We layer upon that social ecological model culture, art, and science. And so for us, culture is hip hop. It is the hip hop culture. For art, it's music and also sometimes movement. So we use this multi-sensory approach where you have the auditory, but then you have the visual from the videos, whether they're animated or live action. And then we have a lot of dance and the movement and the kinesthetic connection right there. The science part of it is of course, using evidence-based strategies around behavior change, using a model that Dr. Williams has also researched and published on called the child-mediated communication model, where children are at the center, who can be incredible conduits and messengers of information. That's how it started with the stroke, hip hop stroke program. But it's also about the science of learning through music. And just like you said so eloquently, Schoolhouse Rock, you know, that was your jam. You know, I can't say that I was so excited about learning how a bill, you know, went on when I was younger, because I was in it. I love the music and I love the video and I could just see it in my head. So, you know, it's something that marketing professionals, advertising professionals have done really well with lots of other products, maybe getting you to buy or do the thing that might not have been the helpful thing, but we are harnessing those techniques the way music occupies more neural real estate in your brain than language itself. When you learn something through a song, like your ABCs or anything else, you retain it in a different way than if someone just tells you, like Dee said. People say things all the time, but how you listen. And I think the last thing I would say is, if Dr. Williams was here, he would say, attention. People's attention is like the #1 commodity right now. It's so hard to get through the ether of all that's in social media and everywhere else. So if you can use something as transformative as music to marry messages and with community immunity, for example, fighting fear with facts, but with an incredible, trusted messenger like DMC, it is the magic that happens.
So let's talk a little bit about exactly the community immunity program and then some of the other body of work that the Dee's involved with and some of the other artists as well. Community immunity is all about spreading factual information about COVID vaccine. To be sure, there's been some concern especially in the Black community about the safety of taking vaccines and perhaps whether vaccines are being safely administered in the Black community. We've shown on our own Bloomberg data, we have a vaccine tracker, that some marginalized communities may not have been receiving vaccine at the same rate as other communities. And so there's been an access issue. But more broadly, now that the vaccine is being made available to younger and younger populations, in addition to anxiety about taking the vaccine, there's just also misinformation. So again, talk about what you're trying to achieve, and then what the music is that's available for people to access.
I think, Dee, if you wouldn't mind sharing your sort of journey through this, I think that would be exciting to hear from when we first started talking about this project to where you are now.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of misinformation out there, and some of it has value. Some people are not too sure about this vaccine thing because of, for example, Tuskegee. So there's so much misinformation out there. There's so many conspiracy theories, but there are also 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 incidents that did happen that might make people in those communities be a little bit, nah, I ain't doing that. Everything from see what they did at Tuskegee, or so much stuff on the internet and social media, they putting chips in you. So people are confused, people are afraid, and people are scared. So for me, the track record that I have and Chuck D has and KRS-One has and Eric B. and Rakim has, there's so much validity to the community to see people who come from where they're from and who have a track record of providing information, concepts, ideas, and images that will build, uplift, inform, and protect people. So the community immunity is a big issue because a lot of people in these communities are reluctant to participate because they don't trust anybody. So what we do with the Community Immunity Initiative is we destroy every fear by using facts. Now, the reason why it works better doing it that way is if a scientist or a politician or a news person is giving out the same information, the source that it's coming from is not something these people can relate to. So we take the same information, put it in a language and a presentation that those people are familiar with, and then we give them the facts. What was beautiful for me is by participating in this, myself, I received an education. So it's all about educating people with the necessary true information so that they themselves feel comfortable with what is going on.
And and so what we did was we we broke it down. We were hearing really clearly what the issues around confidence were, the concerns about misinformation. So instead of making one long resource, we created an anthology that has different components. So one is, what are vaccines and actually how do they work? How do they eradicate diseases that no longer exist? How are they this modern miracle, like things like smallpox and measles that you don't see, right? Dee always talks so eloquently, when he has to go on tour and he had to go visit the South Sudan,
Yes.
he had to get 7 shots.
I get 7 shots.
Yeah.
Yes.
And Dr. Williams will say, when you go see your doctor, if you're in the ER for some emergency, you're not questioning always, well, what's in that, shot that you're going to give me, or what's in that anesthesia, or that kind of a thing. So you really, to break it down, sort of what are vaccines, how do they work? And then particularly to the COVID vaccine, well, how was this created so fast? What's the debunking myths and misinformation, and using folks like Dr. Williams, also on our advisory board, Dr. Monique Hedman. She goes by Dr. Mo Flo. And she's a first-year resident in California. She's starting her career practicing, treating COVID patients in the ICU. These are real doctors with real trusted messengers, and being able to break it down so folks could go on a journey. And so people who are maybe not quite sure will begin to think about it, get into a pre-contemplation stage, to a contemplation stage, to making a plan about getting the vaccine when you're able to. And now that there's a lot more opening up in terms of access, and we also know access is a big issue. We want to make sure that people, when they have access, and how we can advocate for access as well, will choose to take it, to support them, but also to support their families and their community. And that's why, we call it community immunity.
Wow. And of course, you are a 501c3. Bloomberg Philanthropies is one of your supporters. I know you have a lot of corporate supporters that make it possible for all of the materials to be available.
And we are always welcome to other folks that would love to help us, on this journey to spread and scale the resources, of course. Yes.
What I found fascinating when I went online, in addition to the fact that I can't get "let's talk about salt" out of my head, which is a great one. I also watched a wonderful video about 20 seconds or more, which is about hand washing, that a school took the video and did an American Sign Language version, which is kind of cool. Just the whole notion, kind of like your open source.
Yes.
So we can translate these messages in any form, shape, or fashion, which is the beautiful thing. Not just language, but whatever we can use visually, bodies, physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. And that's what's so powerful about using music. Music is that vibration that exists in everybody.
Yes, and then being able to make it even more culturally tailored. So as you mentioned, Karen, yes, you can call it open source. We want schools and organizations and communities to adopt and adapt our resources and make it their own. So for example, we are excited, we're going to be working with Joni Hollyfield. She runs an incredible program called Heart Smiles MD in Baltimore. And we're going to be working with them very soon to redo and sort of remix the background animation so that when Dee is walking down the street in the videos, it looks like Baltimore. It feels like Baltimore. It's my community, to make it even more relevant. And then the young people from Heart Smiles are also going to help think about the best way to share the messages in their communities with their, trusted leaders as well.
And one thing I want to add about the power of doing this, because you had mentioned Run DMC was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2009. And then I had an opportunity to do a bunch of interviews and meet everybody there. And people that was coming into the hall, I got an opportunity to speak in front of them. And some of the stuff that I was just talking about that I was just doing anyway caught the ear of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So in 2010, they brought me back and we did a seminar, a conference in the title of it, Can Music Be Used to Educate the Students? And they brought in teachers from all of the states, all 50 states and stuff like that. We just sat there and talked and talked, and there was about 5 or 6 teachers who took it upon themselves to to use the music to teach the kids. They said, we use the music to teach the kids English, we use the kids to teach math, and all the scores where hip hop was used in these classrooms, in these communities, all of these scores went to above 70s. These were kids that were failing. These were kids that couldn't get over the 40, 50 hump. By using hip hop and music, all of these kids' language and arithmetic started going through the roof. So it's proof that if we use good information, we can have good outcomes.
Wow. And so coming up, I think there's an event coming up in Harlem, I think, in a couple of weeks to further kind of encourage vaccine awareness. Is that right?
Yeah. So Dr. Williams is the co-director of a wellness center at Columbia University Medical Center. There's a site in Harlem, in West Harlem, and it's going to be the start of a weekend pop-up to really connect, particularly with the West Harlem community, and have another place right there in the community to offer vaccines. And Dee, right, and your family will be coming. Yeah.
Yes.
So
Yes,
it's
indeed.
so exciting. And, it is, as we mentioned before, it's about education, it's about the literacy, it's about the confidence, and it's also about access and meeting folks where they are.
And also what's very important too is the medical people, especially with the climate of what's going on with misinformation, conspiracy theories, they need help. They have the solution, but they need help to get the information out there. And also the beauty about it is that now you got media, you got art people, and you got the medical professionals working together. We don't have a victory unless we all work together. There's that old saying that if you tell a lie enough times, people believe it. But it also works if you tell the truth even more, people will stop believing the lies. That was a new thing I thought of last week.
Yeah. But so Lori and Dee, also to you, I mean, as we look out into the future, we're going to get through the spring, we're going to get through the summer, and we're going to be back in the fall, and presumably we'll be even back to more of a new normal, back to more of a normal, whatever that means, right? What do you think about it might be the next issue that you might tackle after we get through? COVID will be with us for a while, but that's a lot of the focus right now. And you've done so many other things around health. But as children and communities kind of get back to normal, back to school full time, what are there other issues that you're thinking about that you're going to want to address through hip hop, where Dee may be called to lend his voice to?
Well, I'll tell you this.
I just completed the one for sugar.
Oh yeah, we haven't even told anyone about that.
Yeah, we have one coming. We're just going to drop a little seed. We have one educating people and the kids about all the extra added sugar that's in our sodas and our cereals, because that's a big issue. And if we attack each part or even the little things in all areas, then we can make obesity not be the problem that it is. And I also think about the COVID, one of the things that we do at Hip Hop Health is once we attack a problem and have some success, we don't stop. So there will be reminders, even when we talk about sugar, or if we're talking about mental health, or if we're talking about diabetes, now the dialogue that is part of this world's culture is remembering what happened with COVID. So 2 or 3 years from now, I'll be dropping a rhyme, and maybe at the end of the rhyme, so that we don't forget to wash your hands. So those little things will always be there. Every little thing that we had a victory in, you must completely involve that dialogue into the whole big pictures.
I'm so glad that you said that, Dee, because it is comprehensive, right? It's not like there's this one particular health issue and this is a separate, it is all connected.
Yes,
right?
it is.
So, we of course have always focused a lot on obesity prevention, on educating about sort of what to do, about how to choose healthful foods, how to be physically active. And I think, to your point, Karen, about sort of what's next, and sort of adding to what Dee said, we are really concerned about young people's mental health. I mean, we've always been concerned about it, the adverse childhood experiences that are not acknowledged and not dealt with, especially as young people grow up to be adults. But all of the PTSD, all of the trauma that everyone is going to feel around the country and around the world from this pandemic, whether your family lost a job or where they live, or just not being able to be around your friends and doing remote learning and lack of interpersonal connection. Like, there's so many things, even from the lowest level to the biggest level. So we are absolutely committed to creating resources around mental health, around combating toxic stress, around educating around ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. And, we've done a lot of work with Dee around physical activity, and physical activity is a tremendous way to combat stress and toxic stress. So we have a whole series called Hype the Breaks, which is helping people energize, where people bounce and jump and kick and dance. And we are actually going into the studio in 2 weeks and filming another series called Breaking It Down, of another series of 2-minute dance breaks that you can kind of do anywhere, anytime, for kids and families and young people of all ages that are ambulatory or not. You could do them in the seat, standing. So we're going to go back. We have about 32 different videos on our site now that are available for free, from 2 minutes to 15 minutes, and we're going to add another 20. And I guess the other thing that we are also committed to, because we are based in health equity, that's why this all started. And you can't really work in the world of public health without saying out loud that racism is a public health issue. So we care really deeply about creating anti-racism resources, around resources that help young people and families understand that there is a tremendous connection between racism and mental health and stress, and how we can acknowledge it, but then what are the things that we can do about it. So, and Dee, I don't know if I put you on the spot here, but you have your own nonprofit.
Yes.
This is
not new to you, Dee. You have been involved. You have your own nonprofit, I believe, is called Felix. Can you talk in like 30 seconds? Tell me about that.
It's the Felix organization. When I was 35 years old, I found out that I was adopted in a form of foster care, which was a shocking revelation. And then I hooked up with a lady named Sheila Jaffe, who's one of the biggest casting directors in Hollywood. She cast Entourage and Sopranos. So when we got together, we said we were fortunate to be adopted. What about those kids in foster care who continuously go through the cycles? So we created a summer camp for foster kids that, they come enjoy nature and stuff like that. But while they're there, we want to instill life skills, good habits, healthy habits, mental stability for these kids while they're young. We don't want to wait till they're 18 and 19 years old, age out the system, and there's only jail, the grave, or the mental institution for them. So we provide opportunities for foster kids so that we can keep them happy, healthy, and productive.
Wow. Well, I can't thank you enough for talking with us today. Lori Rose Benson and Daryl McDaniels, also known as DMC. Really great conversation. Again, folks can go to your website. All the resources are available for free. They can download, they can use with their organizations or with their families to get moving. Again, my favorite so far is Let's Talk About Salt.
That's incredible.
That's a fun one. Maybe because I like the animation with the woman in it. I got to see it like that.
Yes, it's amazing.
Salt and pepper,
you do connect. Very, very cool. So again, thanks to Lori and Daryl, Hip Hop Public Health, great organization, really interesting work, and really makes you think about how you can use how art really does matter and how music really does matter, and that there is a science to it and how effective it can be. Next week on Black in Focus, we're switching gears. We're going to be talking about Sheryl Mckissick Daniel. She's the president and CEO of McKissick & McKissick. It's the oldest minority-owned professional design and construction company in the United States. They've been around for more than 114 years. They can trace their family connection to the construction business back to slavery. And we're going to be talking with Ms. Sheryl Mckissick Daniel about the infrastructure spending plan that was just announced yesterday. And so we're going to kind of talk about what that means for not only just her company, but just for the construction and building and infrastructure, all the other related fields around that. So until then, again, thanks to Hip Hop Public Health. I'm Karen Toulon, and this is Bloomberg. Have a good long weekend.